We got a good question from Taylor. Taylor says this: I've been struggling with epistemology lately. Epistemology is how do you know what you know? With my background in, well, religious studies, religious education, political science, history, geography, and economics, and some other things, how do you know what you know is crucial in those fields. But then when you slide over to strength conditioning and track and field, the same questions come up with much clearer answers in some cases. So let's get going. Most of what I know has been told to me by a trusted person or authority. Very often, in my case of Ralph Mahn in my life, Dick Nottmeyer, a trusted authority is sometimes the best. Now, I've had people who've been very, very good who've found out later on have lied to me a lot. So even a trusted authority, well, there's authorities and there's trusted authorities. I like what this is heading already. Since there isn't enough time in life to find out everything one needs firsthand. However, I come across people who believe what I think are downright falsehoods, ranging from what I consider to be minor delusions, to downright conspiracy theories. Pause. Well, Taylor, this is something that I kind of think I was blessed. Because I was in the great books tradition as a child when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, when Robert Kennedy was assassinated, Martin Luther King, Watergate, Vietnam, the OPEC energy crisis. One of the nice things about the great books tradition is very often the answer that most people think, or the most obvious, Occam's razor comes to mind. I believe that Lee Harvey Oswald, by himself, took those shots. And if you actually, it always makes me laugh when people say, "Well, he didn't have enough time to load it." Well, you don't think he had when he stuck the gun out the window? It wasn't loaded. So I always think that when you get to a conspiracy theory, very often the most logical answer might be the truest. I do have weaknesses, and I'll be frank with you. With UFOs, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, sometimes I have a little bit of a blind eye, but we can talk more about that another time. The trouble is they have their own trusted people. Yeah, conspiracy theories always have people who start them. There are some people like Adolf Hitler in history who said a lot of things that were not true, but if you say it loud enough, people believe you. Communities and authorities who they think this false, I think, information from, which is a fundamentally similar process to what I use to acquire most of my knowledge. Of course, I really think my sources are more trustworthy, but of course, so do they. What is really the difference between us at the bottom? You're not at the bottom, Taylor, with this question. And is it possible to decide objectively who is right? It seems to me that the fitness industry has its fair share of inaccuracies. Oh, yes. And falsehoods that abound. So my question is, what tools or process do you use to separate the wheat from the chaff? Hey, Taylor, I was very lucky to have a very good class on ethics. And one of the things we were taught is that common sense is the highest form of proving something. I know that sounds crazy, but so there's all kinds of, I'm winging it. If you go online and you look up my YouTube talk on epistemology, I have everything there for you. But just on the top of my head, it's going to be tough. So there's authority, there's deductive logic, there's inductive logic, there's experience, which I hold very tight to my heart. I think you need to experience things to understand them sometimes. There's eyewitness, which is interesting because eyewitness is not always the most trustworthy. Ask any district attorney. Sometimes you see things that they aren't there. Or there was another really plausible explanation. And then there's this one called common sense. And when we're looking for jurors here in the United States, one of the things we should have on that body of 12 jurors is people who have common sense. Now, common sense doesn't always mean that you make a lot of money or you have a great job. And to be honest, I'm getting more and more convinced that becoming extremely wealthy is as much about hitting the lottery as it is hitting the lottery. If your father worked on the internet and you had a computer at home where you could work on the internet, and so you're on the internet a decade, 15 years before everybody else, you probably did a lot better financially than those of us who showed up a little bit later. All you need is one or two business transactions go your way, and everybody thinks you're a genius. And as a very stable genius myself, I can only say that that's not always true. So what I use is I try to use common sense. I'm doing a programming course as I'm speaking, and one of the hardest things to get across to people is simple common sense. So, for example, if I'm selling you a line of 24 machines that do 24 different movements and they cost $24,000 each, I'm going to probably tell you that that those machines are the answers to track and field, body composition, fat loss. What are you doing? Oh, triathlons. You're doing marathons. What are you doing? Bike riding. Yeah. But you have to sit back and go, little Danny's making some profit selling these machines. Could there be a conflict of interest here? And yes, there is. So for me, when I go through and I look at certain things, I look for common sense. Now, in my field, there's out and out liars and thieves. And it seems that in many cases, if you're a chiropractor and you stick your name doctor in front of everything, people start to believe you even more. And by the way, I love chiropractors. I'm not ripping them on at all. When someone tosses the name doctor in, I work with a number of people who are doctors, lawyers. Jurisprudence is a JD, which is a doctor. If you go on in education, you get a doctorate in education. So you have to be careful even if you see the name doctor on something, especially if the person just basically goes online and steals other people's work. So let's do it this way. Common sense. Do you really honestly think that there are adults harvesting children for their glands? If you think that, that's fine, but I'm not going to give you the keys to my car. So you have a homework assignment, Taylor. One is to find that YouTube video on epistemology. I want you to look at it, and then I want you to start to apply the art of common sense to many of your questions in life. Boy, I hope that helped.